how we respond when kids succeed and they fail are what makes our legacy as teachers, how we're remembered. When a kid does what they're supposed to do and when they don't, when they get the A on the test and when they don't, how we respond then. And ultimately this, understand your legacy is not built in your data. Your legacy is built in the relationships that you build with these kids and what they remember when they walk out of your classroom. You have an opportunity every single day to make an impact on the life of a child, to leave an imprint. And the most powerful parent-teacher conference we will ever have will not come from us, but it will come from the mouths of our students when they go home. What are they saying about our classrooms, about our hallways? What are they saying about our classes in the streets, the hallways, the lunch rooms, the ride home with their parent, the bus ride home, the conversation with grandma at night? What are they saying about us? The world's got a lot to say about the work that we do, brother. The world's got a lot to say, a lot of criticisms. But I'll tell you this much right now, to the kids, teachers will always matter because teachers will always care and we ain't going anywhere, ever.
You are now listening to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast with your host, Jorge Valenzuela.
This is education coach Jorge Valenzuela. Welcome to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast, where I provide all educators, whether instructional leaders or teachers, tips on how to be their best both personally and professionally. Now let's get into it. My name is Dr. Jorge Valenzuela, and we're here today with an incredible educator, my new friend, Jonathan Alsheimer. Jonathan is an education consultant, a coach, a teacher, and one of the most charismatic, inspirational, motivational, and best speakers I've seen in education. I first came across his work on LinkedIn and then Instagram and X about 2 years ago, and immediately knew I had to interview this guy and have him on the show. His energy is contagious. His commitment to young people and teachers is real. And his voice has been shaping how educators all around our country think about engagement. Much respect to you, Jonathan. How are you?
What's up, brother? I am so excited to be on the show today, man. And I love, just like we were chatting before, I love talking all things ed. And I'm going to do my best to stay in the frame, man, because when I start getting going, I get excited, I get passionate. I love this work. And I love talking to people that also love this work, man. So it's a pleasure to be here.
I've heard that you live in Virginia. Is that correct?
Yeah, Northern Virginia, brother. And we're about to get some snow, so we're pumped up today, man. Snow day.
Well,
tomorrow.
I'm in Richmond. Tomorrow is my 5-year anniversary. So we're headed up to Northern Virginia, Washington, D.C. So hopefully we'll make it tomorrow.
That's awesome, man. Good luck and happy anniversary, man.
Jonathan, you talk a lot about student engagement, and I see you online in classrooms all year long and you're coaching educators. When you look at the landscape right now, you've seen the same data I've seen. Kids don't want to be in school. From your perspective, what's holding teachers back right now from engaging kids at the level that they need to be engaged?
Man, that's a great question. I think the hardest thing for teachers right now is there's such a tough amount of things on the shoulders of teachers. I mean, let's be honest about the work. I mean, back in the day, my dad taught 34 years, retired now, and he says, man, I don't think I could do it anymore. And he was a legend, great teacher, best teacher I ever had. My wife had him as a teacher, best teacher ever. And he said, it's different now. Like there's so many things and there was a lot of things that teachers had to do back then too. But I mean, you're thinking about like lesson planning is at the bottom of the list. It's like we're in some schools. I mean, when I started my profession, I was in the inner city. We were wanding kids in the morning. We had to figure out what kids ate, what kids didn't. We had to know, we're going through the things we had to do. But it was almost like you had a job before your job even started on that given day of all the stuff that you had to get done into the data meetings and the this and that. You're eating lunch, standing up while emailing a parent, while on the phone with your admin, talking about a situation that happened. So as it relates to engagement, as we digress a little bit, it's because there's so many things that kind of fall in line ahead of that teachers become overwhelmed. And then the problem is, okay, how do I have time to do probably the most important thing in my work, which honestly is the instructional piece, because instruction draws kids in. Engagement, in my opinion, is broken up into two pieces. One's engagement instructionally, one's engagement relationally. And both pieces are so important in this work. But if you don't have the time and the committed time, the intentionality of it is huge. If you're not sitting down intentionally with, I'm going to draw up a game plan for what I want to do to teach math or science or whatever, things start to really quickly kind of fall apart. I like to say this, like on your worst day as a teacher, no matter what, you are somebody's favorite teacher and the reason why they're coming to school. But it's very easy to forget. It's very easy to forget that in this work. And so I think with all of the things, it's quick for us as teachers to forget what's important. And honestly, what is important as it relates to engagement is this: teach like it's your kid in the front row. And as I look at that, I have a little girl right now who's trying to get my attention because she just got back from school. And I like to look at all these kids like they're my kid. And what does my kid need? What do I want for my kid? I want this. I want a teacher that's going to challenge them instructionally and academically, but also be that relationship piece for them. That's something in education we need to get back to and focus on. And it's not necessarily the teacher's fault for this or the admin's fault. It's just kind of the way we're going. We need to go back to making this a focus.
I always look at the research because I'm a researcher. Dr. John Hattie said, any new initiative in schools, no matter what it is, if you don't factor in engagement from the teachers and from the kids, is doomed to fail. I love what you said about relational engagement. I think that has to come before instruction. So Retta Hammond once said, being culturally responsive means that you get to know your children and you know them as people. And once you know them as people, then you can teach them the things that we need to teach them instructionally. That goes back to having a game plan. And what I love about your work is every time I see you online, well, not every time, but most times, you have a new strategy. Having a strategy is one of the most important things we can do in our lives, whether it's a marriage, it's fitness, being in the classroom. And I love that you amplify that and that you teach us how to do that every day.
I appreciate that too, man. And honestly, like I would just had something written down from the other day. And honestly, like as a teacher, like as it relates to having a strategy or a game plan, like you gotta have what's your in a classroom, like how do you set up your lessons? How do you set, for me, it's like, you gotta hook the kids. I have it all written out. I have a plan. It's my, I call it a standard. It's my standard. And the standard of which I roll with as a teacher. And if I'm an administrator, it's the standard of which I would hold my teachers accountable. And I want this done and this done and this done. But ultimately, when you have a strategy or you have a game plan, you can make almost anything work, and it can look a lot of different ways, and it can meet the needs of a lot of different kids.
If you're watching this on YouTube or listening on Spotify or iTunes, please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the like button and share this episode with your family, friends, and colleagues who are interested in self-improvement through lifelong learning. And now for a word from one of our sponsors.
We had the pleasure of listening to George this morning on project-based learning, and he shared his story that his aunt encouraged him to go into education. And she was absolutely right. He's so talented at sharing information in a way that is easy to digest and is inspiring to go back and actually implement and make change.
So my takeaway is that Mr. Valenzuela was very inspiring. He was very motivational and helped me to think about a new way of getting my teachers excited.
When I set out to do a workshop, my key deliverable is energy. And this momentum is used to make connections, inspire, educate, and ultimately transform the audience so that they're compelled to take that same energy back to their schools and communities. And although we have fun, we tackle the hard topics of today, like educational policy, pedagogy for improving curriculum and instruction, and empowering today's students by connecting our work to the needs of the workforce. So please consider lifelong learning defined for your next keynote, workshop, or conference, and overall instructional and educational coaching needs. My name is George, and I hope to connect with you soon.
We would love to have him come and do some work with us and help us be a little more successful and help our students to be more successful.
So in the world of social media, where the hook is the most important thing because it stops the scroll, and you brought up the hook in the classroom, okay? Do the kids determine the hook, or do you do what you think is cool?
That's a loaded question, brother, because it can be both.
Wait. So
right.
I'm asking you because you're a master of the hook. You have gone viral in a way that most education consultants haven't. I recently went on TikTok. First time, I'm learning how to do this. And what I realized is that all my years in social media, I was doing what I thought was cool, what other consultants do. I'm at the workshop, I'm here, I'm there. And in the past few months, I've had to learn what the audience on each of the platforms and what the algorithm deems is the right way to do it. And I realized that most people don't understand that. So you brought up the hook. Who determines that hook in your classroom? I already know the answer because I know you're smart.
Hey, man, I'm going to tell you right now, but that's what I'm saying, though. It's a loaded question because ideally I have that kind of game plan of where I want to go with something. I have something in my mind, but you have to, like when I do a seminar with teachers and I'm doing a workshop, I ask them before you start your unit and lesson plan stuff. And this goes back to your hook question. So stay with me. I ask 6 very important questions. Like, can the kids build stuff? Can they do this? Can they do this? But one of the major questions is, can I pull in what students are interested in? Can I pull their interests into what we're doing? And if I could pull it in such a way that, for example, I was just teaching a lesson not too long ago about theme, and I was talking about theme, and I pulled in Disney music. And I said, okay, let's take in some Disney music. This is things kids like, Disney music or Disney movies. So I pulled in a movie that was off of Amazon, very popular at the time, a movie called Wonder. And then I also pulled in some Disney music. And I'm getting this, and I'm taking what kids are interested in. They like music, they like movies, right? So let's use that as our hook. So think about it like coaching. Good coaches don't make their players fit their game plan. Like Coach K, he doesn't make his team fit what he wants to do. What he does is he takes his game plan and he molds it around the specialties of his players and what they need to succeed based off of each other. So sometimes those hooks can change every year based on the needs of your kids or based on the interests of your kids. And just like with social media, man, what's cool with the algorithm this week might be different next week, right? So we got to do the same thing with that. Same as teachers. We got to mold with the times, man. Kids love Elf on the Shelf. Can you use that as a hook to get kids to want to read a story or whatever? Like, it doesn't matter what it is, but buying into what the kids are into, a lot of times will get them to engage in a way that we're not used to, but makes the classroom way more successful.
All right, Jonathan. So coach me for a moment. I'm a new teacher. I get semi-engagement, but not full engagement. What are the first moves I can make tomorrow morning that will elevate engagement from passive to active? Help me out.
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take whatever content you're working on, and I'm going to think this. I'm going to say, number one, take what you've learned your whole life, and this is going to sound kind of silly, but don't be afraid to throw it out. Like, you hear a lot of people say, like, rigor. It's got to be this, or it's got to be content. It's got to be whatever. Listen, if it's going to get the kids to want to read, use it. If it's good for kids, it's good for education. And I always like to scale back to also kind of pull on the kids and allow them to feel like their confidence is building. So start with this. Let's go backwards a little bit. As you set up your unit plan, start with, like, don't be afraid. If you're teaching 9th grade, go back to 7th grade. Use 7th grade level reading or math or whatever you're doing, and get kids to feel confident first. Then you build upon it. Then it becomes more rigorous, or you expound on something. But also, don't be afraid to play games. I teach the most boring subject in history, man, called history. And I teach some of the most boring topics within history. And there's sometimes where I'm trying to get kids to learn how to analyze a text and grab evidence to prove a point. But they don't want to read and they don't want to write. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to play a game with them. And I'm gonna trick them almost. And I'm gonna say, listen, like, we're gonna play a game called Grudge Ball, or we're gonna play a game called Human Bingo, or we're gonna play that. They hear game, they think fun. But what I do is I preface what we're learning with that. So we're gonna take this, we're gonna spend 15 minutes analyzing, looking through this, and this is what I want you to do. You're building evidence, you're doing whatever. But this is coming, and they know it's coming. It's almost like that verbal hook. They know it's coming. They see it's coming. And the more you sprinkle it in, the more they get used to doing these things. Then they're buying in even more. They're engaged even more because they're like, you know what? I'm going to do that boring stuff because I know the fun stuff is coming. You're going to have teachers that are like, I don't have time for games. I got to get through the standards. I got to get through this. I got to get through that. Listen, my data was always amazing, and it wasn't because I was the best teacher. It was because I didn't shy away from those things that kids feel as fun. Think about the word engagement for a second. Like, does a kid show up and go, math was really engaging today? No, they don't. If they did, they should probably run for president or something, right? They say math was fun. So don't be afraid to make it fun. And how you do that's up to you. But
those kids work for you. Those kids work for you. Yeah, I can tell. I was one of those kids I was really good at school. I always had great grades. I would compete with my friends and write like rap songs and stuff like out of vocabulary words. And so I would learn a lot, but I would work harder for teachers that I felt were invested in me or liked me in some way. And I would ignore those teachers that I felt didn't like me. I can tell that you're that kind of teacher. Jonathan, how did your students change how you view your role as a teacher?
That's a really powerful question, man. And, I'm 16 years deep in the game of education.
Wow.
And I would say to answer that question really thoroughly, as you can tell, I'm really diving into this because there's a lot to that.
Mm-hmm.
My kids changed my view on ed. So when I had kids, that changed how I viewed my students. Where I became a dad. When I became a dad, I adopted this, like, teach like it's your kid in the front row. Every kid's your kid. How would you teach your kid? How would you respond when they succeed?
Wow.
But with my students, that kind of progressed in a similar fashion where in the beginning, I was like, you know what? I just got to get my data up. I just got to do this. I just got to do that. I liked the students. I cared for my students, but it was what I was told in education. It was like, we got to have, our data's got to move and this and that. And then eventually, the more I had kids year after year, I bonded with these kids through many different reasons, building relationships, the fun games I'd play, whatever. And then I started to see this role as more of, I'm a parent to them in a way where I'm trying to build these kids up because we're going to send them out to an unforgiving world at whatever age. And this world doesn't care whether where you come from, whether you got money or you don't, what your background is. It doesn't care. So quickly I became changed in the fact that I'm going to teach these young boys how to become men. I'm going to teach these young ladies how these young ladies to become women. And in addition to that, academics. And in addition to that, how to be successful, maybe businessmen or businesswomen, and hopefully look at things differently and ask a lot of questions and never just listen to what people say, but to always look at everything through a critical lens, a respectful but critical lens. And so I believe that's kind of how they changed me, was just that natural progression I think that most teachers have. That when you start the job, to you, it's kind of like, it's my job. But then eventually I learned very quickly, in fact, which is what I think made me different, was that my goal in life was to always have a greater impact. And what better way to impact the world than to be a teacher? Because I have an imprint and a mark on every single one of these kids. Brother, I just got an Instagram DM from an old student who's now married, and from an old student who's now married, or she's engaged and about to be married. And she's like, I don't even know if you remember me, but you were my favorite teacher. And she goes on and talking about the stuff. And we go back and forth in this discourse. And it was very clear that there was a relationship built in the classroom where a kid felt like they were safe, where they felt like they could learn, where they could have fun. And, it's okay as a teacher sometimes to not have all the answers right away, because like I'm answering your question right now, we evolve over time and we get better over time. And I wish I was as good now as I wish I was good back then as I am now. It would have made me a better teacher. I could have made way more of an impact. You got to fail a lot, and you got to fail a lot to get to whatever that point is, right? And there was many times I bombed lessons. There was many times I bombed situations where I should have built that kid up differently. I should have responded differently. And actually, those changed me just as much as the times where it worked.
Anyone out there listening, if you hear what Jonathan is saying and you're a teacher, you're an educator, you have to start with the end in mind and think about the kids in your classroom. And they change every year. So don't be afraid to bomb lessons, to fail forward. But the whole point is to care and to have a strategy. That's the whole point. If you look at everything he's saying, it's heart and strategy. And that produces engagement and learning. Now for a word from one of our sponsors. I move around a lot of schools, and we're seeing a huge disconnect. A lot of teachers that have come from non-traditional pathways, especially in the past few years. And so just interactions, expectations is really the first step. All of my teachers, raise your right hand, and please repeat after me. I promise that I will speak positivity into my students. All of my administrators, all my directors, All my principals, all my coordinators, raise your hands, please. Your right hand. And repeat after me. I promise that I will speak positivity into my faculty and staff. Thank you. All right, Jonathan. Teachers are burnt out. You brought that up earlier. If you had 30 seconds to inspire a room of teachers, what would you say?
Man, I would say this. I speak from the heart of a father no matter where I ever go and speak. And here's the truth. From the heart of a dad, this is what I'm going to say. How we respond when kids succeed and they fail are what makes our legacy as teachers, how we're remembered. When a kid does what they're supposed to do and when they don't, when they get the A on the test and when they don't, how we respond then. And ultimately this, understand your legacy is not built in your data. Your legacy is built in the relationships that you build with these kids and what they remember when they walk out of your classroom. You have an opportunity every single day to make an impact on the life of a child, to leave an imprint. And the most powerful parent-teacher conference we will ever have will not come from us, but it will come from the mouths of our students when they go home. What are they saying about our classrooms, about our hallways? What are they saying about our classes in the streets? And I don't mean the mean streets of Richmond or Northern Virginia or wherever everybody's from. I mean the hallways, the lunch rooms, the ride home with their parent, the bus ride home, the conversation with grandma at night. What are they saying about us? And those intentional relationship building conversations, or those intentional lessons that we have, the intentional strategy that we use to make reading fun or math engaging, that game that we pull in. These are all the things that get these kids to show up at our doors. And even the kid that you think doesn't care is going to be the one who hugs you the hardest 7 years down the road, because you were just different for them. And to the kids, the world's got a lot to say about the work that we do, brother. The world's got a lot to say, a lot of criticisms. But I'll tell you this much right now, to the kids, teachers will always matter, because teachers will always care, and we ain't going anywhere. Ever.
One thing I notice about you, Jonathan, is your confidence. You're very grounded in faith, family, and country. Where did that come from?
Man, that came from my parents, brother. It came from my family, my dad, my mom. I grew up in the church, man. And, I can't sit here and say that, I was always the role model that I would love to say I am, but I, as a young kid, but as an adult, being a father, I think I realized that just like being a teacher, I have in my opinion, this is my opinion, that it is a duty that I take very, very personal to not only build students up, but to build my kids up in what I want them to be, and the role model I want to be for them. And so I think faith, family, our country, I love the country I live in, right? And I love God, and I'm not afraid to share it. And I think, some people are afraid to share it. Man, I got my devotional right here. Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu. I'm an MMA guy, right? I'm not afraid. I think that's what makes it cool, man. We got these tough dudes who love the Lord. They're not afraid to talk about it, right? And whatever that is. And so
on one of my keynotes, I said, I need artificial intelligence to talk to me faith-based because I believe in God. I make it a point to say that now because I realize that we've gone so far away from that. And there's a lot of people that do believe in God. They don't want to say it because they're afraid of how it might look. I think we need to stop caring. So many people don't care about what other people think. So I think when it comes to that, we need to care less. Jonathan, so this is an observation, and it's not really a question. I've had to learn about you in order to do this interview. One of the things that struck me a couple years ago, I was in Chicago. In many of our schools in America, we see a big Hispanic Latino population. I know you've seen this, and I've seen that some of your kids are as well. And one of the administrators said, George, the reason why we hired you is because you look like the kids. You remind us of the kids because we heard your story, we know enough about you, and we want the kids to see someone who looks like them who's successful. And we want the teachers to see that someone who looks like their kids, essentially was one of these kids, is now successful. From hearing you and listening to you and really seeing your heart and your faith and everything you're about, I think the reason why you're so successful is because teachers see themselves in you. It's the opposite of my story, but I think that's what's happening with you. I love the way you lean into that. I have to give you your flowers. The way that you teach and the way that you speak to audiences, you need to be everywhere. And if any superintendent is listening to this, any director, any principal, this is a guy that you need to get in your school yesterday, because teachers today need to be engaged, need to see people that remind them of who they are or who they used to be.
That's powerful, man. That's powerful. And not only, I can't say thank you enough for that, but the one thing I really love about that too is like, that's the truth, man. And I think there's
Yeah.
I think we live, I jokingly say this quite often, is we work in a profession where you have to sound a certain way and look a certain way and this and that. And you know, what's interesting, that authentically being you should be celebrated in a way, because you got kids, man, that they're looking for someone to connect with.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
what about this? What, like, my principal wrote for a while, like back in the day, rode a skateboard around, like what the skateboard kids needed somebody to identify with, or what, you know, there's this and there's that. I was at MMA. I loved MMA. So I was connecting with kids over MMA, and everybody's like, we brought in a UFC fighter to our school. And I even remember the teachers, I reached out to a UFC fighter, my favorite guy at the time, Paul Felder. There's a whole documentary on it. And my students loved it. And I had teachers that were like, well, we're going to have fights out in the teachers' lounges and fights in the hallway. They're like, there's no place for cage fighting in schools. And I was like, you know what, man? I think differently. And if I'm a kid in that audience, I'm gonna gravitate towards this. Of course, he didn't show up and like talk about fist fighting everybody. He talked actually about wanting to use in theater and all this stuff. But when you see someone that you connect with, and then all of a sudden they're successful, or you see that, then you can also like kind of see beyond the facade too, and like, man, maybe I can do this, or maybe I have an opportunity here. And I think there's a lot of people in teaching that want to do amazing things, and they just need to let that authenticity roll and see where the cards fall.
Jonathan, if you can change one thing about school culture overnight, what would it be and why?
Oh man, that's a really hard question, brother. If I could change one thing about school culture overnight, you know what? This is what it would be like. All right. If I could do it, if this is my school, here's what I would see. Every single teacher in the hallway, every single day. And I get it. You're at your desk sometimes and you got to like do your thing. Sometimes I'm, getting a phone call, but 99 times out of 100, we are all out in the hallways and we are making kids feel like they are the most important part of our day. I always said to my students, like when I had a kid miss school, I was like, dude, my whole day was rocked because you weren't here, man. Like you ruined my whole day. I remember I told a kid this, and he looked at me like I thought he was kidding. And he goes, are you serious? And I was like, yeah, dude. Like but that's what I want. Every teacher to make every kid feel like, imagine. I say it during my keynote, like, why can't school be more like Disney World? And everybody's like, well, wait a minute. Like Disney World, we don't have the budget of Disney World. We don't have roller coasters. And this is what I say. Listen, as a dad of 2 little girls, this is my cell phone. I got a pop socket of Mickey on the back. I never went to Disney growing up because my parents were both teachers and we were too broke. So as an adult now, and that's a joke for everybody's listening, but as an adult now, I go to Disney way too much. It's killing my bank account. But you want to know why Disney's so great? It's not for the roller coasters. You can get those anywhere. It's and it's not by the $1 billion budget. It's by the dude who's selling pretzels, the pretzel guy. I'm dead serious. We went to Disney World and we went up to the guy who's selling pretzels, and I was like, can I have 2 Mickey pretzels? And he's like, here are some magic pretzels. And my girls are like, oh, going crazy. And he's like, do you want some magic cheese? And they're like, yeah. And he's like, here are some magic cheese. And they're like going crazy. That dude didn't grow up saying, I want to sell pretzels someday. And he probably makes less money than anybody working at a school. But you know what? That guy on that day chose to make an impact by selling pretzels. Imagine what teachers can do. And this is at Disney World. Imagine what teachers could do with the platform that we have if we had the same mindset of the pretzel guy at Disney World. That alone right there is the culture builder that I wish every school would gravitate towards, every school would absorb, and that teachers would realize, man, that is the secret sauce. That's the Michael's secret stuff in Space Jam right there for every teacher and every kid. And that is the cultural game changer.
What a perfect way to end this show. Jonathan, let's put it up to God, not the universe. How can people contact you so you can speak at their school, event, or conference?
My man, visit jonathanalsheimer.com, or you can hit me up on Instagram or X. I'm on LinkedIn as well, but on Instagram and X, I am at Mr. Alsheimer. Shoot me a DM. I'd love to set up an email conversation with anybody. I just love talking education, man. So thank you so much for your time.
Last word, last piece of advice.
Be authentically you. Teach every single kid like it's your kid in the front row, and realize your potential as an educator, and just know that you have an opportunity to make an impact and be intentional about it.
That's it for this time. Until next time, this is the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast. You're a teacher or administrator. You lead by walking alongside your students and your staff. You teach them what to do. You model for them. Let's say you're in a situation where you don't know what to do, and you bring in a coach or a resource. You learn alongside them. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Now, the second thing is this. Give your people feedback, not pushback. Whoever you push back on, whether physically or verbally, they're going to do it right back immediately. And if they're intimidated by our position, our status, they're going to do it behind our backs and ruin our programs. My guy. I want to leave you on this note. Trajectories can be changed. When I was in 10th grade, here's a snapshot of who I was in 10th grade. There's a rapper named Rakim. I'm not sure if you guys know about Rakim, but he used to say, it's not where you're from, it's where you at. And I played that on my headphones at 16 years old every day until I believed it. And I'm showing you this because I'm seeing versions of this throughout American schools. This is your reality of what you have to face. If I can do it, any kid can do it, but they have to work hard. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast with Jorge Valenzuela.